Struggling single dad lends his old car to traveler, unaware she's a billionaire who changes his life. The old Toyota wasn't much, but it was all James Mitchell had to get his daughter to school each morning. Still, when he saw the woman stranded in the rain, he didn't hesitate to hand over his keys. "Take it as long as you need," he said, already thinking about which bus route they'd have to take tomorrow. The woman thanked him quietly, her simple clothes dripping with rain. If only James knew he'd just helped Sarah Chen, the reclusive tech billionaire who'd been searching for something real in a world of fake smiles and hidden agendas. As she drove away, Sarah glanced in the rearview mirror at the kind stranger, getting soaked in the rain. In that moment, she decided to change his life. But would a man who gave away his last possession be willing to accept the gift of a lifetime? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The alarm blared at 4:30 a.m., and James Mitchell's calloused hand reached out to silence it before the sound could wake Emma. In the dim light of their small apartment, he navigated around the pile of textbooks his daughter had left on the floor. Advanced. Reading for a 12-year-old, the teachers always said. The pride he felt was worth every extra shift he worked to keep her in that school. The bathroom mirror revealed the same tired face he'd seen every morning for the past 5 years, since Maria left them for her better life in California. Dark circles under his eyes matched the grey streaks appearing too early in his black hair, but there was no time for self-pity, not with bills to pay and a daughter to raise. James pulled on his Navy mechanic's coveralls, the patches on the knees telling stories of countless hours spent under cars at Pete's auto shop. The morning routine was a well-rehearsed dance, coffee brewing while he packed Emma's lunch. A peanut butter and honey sandwich, no jelly, too expensive this week, an apple, and the cookies their elderly neighbor Mrs. Rodriguez had kindly shared yesterday. Their apartment kitchen was barely big enough for 2 people to stand in, but they'd made it work. The broken washing machine sat in the corner like a metal monument to their financial struggles, forcing their weekly trips to the laundromat. James had tried fixing it himself, but some parts were simply beyond repair, like many things in their lives. At 6:15 a.m., he gently woke Emma. "Rise and shine, Einstein," he whispered, using his special nickname for her. She stirred, her dark curls a wild mess against the pillow, but her eyes opened with that same sharp intelligence that never failed to amaze him. "Is the washing machine fixed yet, Dad?" she asked, the same question she'd been asking for 3 weeks. "Not yet, sweetheart, but soon." The lie tasted bitter, but hope was something he refused to let die in their home. Emma got ready for school, while James checked her homework one last time. Physics equations well beyond his understanding filled her notebook, but her teacher's encouraging comments told him all he needed to know. His daughter was going places. If only he could keep up with the mounting costs of her education. The morning drive to school in his '98 Toyota Corolla was their special time. Emma would talk about her upcoming science fair project, something about sustainable energy that made his head spin, while he focused on ignoring the concerning sounds coming from the engine. The car had seen better days, but it was their lifeline. Without it, he couldn't get to his second job delivering packages after his shift at the garage. "Dad," Emma said suddenly, her voice serious, "Jason's mum offered to pay for my science fair materials." James's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "That's kind of her, but we can manage." "But we can manage," he repeated, softer this time. Pride was perhaps his greatest sin, but it was also his last possession. They weren't charity cases. They were fighters. Dropping Emma at school, he watched her join her friends, her second-hand backpack patched with colorful badges hiding its worn spots. She turned back to wave, and for a moment his heart swelled with a mixture of love and determination. Somehow he would give her the future she deserved. The drive to Pete's auto shop was accompanied by the morning news radio, stories of tech billionaires and corporate mergers washing over him like a foreign language. That world had nothing to do with his reality of oil changes, tire rotations, and the constant calculations of which Bill could wait another week. Pete greeted him with a stack of work orders. Thompson's Mercedes needs a full service, and there's a brake job waiting. Oh, and James? He hesitated. The school called yesterday. Emma's tuition. I'll have it by Friday. James cut in quickly. He'd skip lunch this week, maybe pick up an extra delivery shift. Something would work out. Something had to. As he slid under the first car of the day, the familiar smell of motor oil and metal surrounding him, James thought about the upcoming science fair. Emma's project on renewable energy could open doors for her future, scholarships, maybe even college opportunities. He just had to keep everything together until then. Just had to keep the plates spinning, the bills juggled, and his daughters' dreams alive. The washing machine at home could wait. Emma's science fair materials couldn't. And somewhere between the morning oil changes and the evening deliveries, he'd figure out how to make it all work. Because that's what fathers did. That's what fighters did. And James Mitchell was nothing if not a fighter. Sarah Chen stared at her reflection in the penthouse window, the Seattle skyline glittering behind her like a constellation of artificial stars. Another board meeting had just ended, another billion-dollar deal closed, another round of fake smiles. And hidden agendas survived. Her assistant's voice droned through the intercom with the day's remaining obligations. 3 interviews, a charity gala, and a video conference with Tokyo. Cancel everything, Sarah said, surprising herself with the decision. The silence that followed lasted exactly 4 seconds. She counted them. Ms. Chen, the Forbes interview has been scheduled for 3 months. And the gala, I said cancel everything. Her voice was firm but not unkind. At 34, Sarah had built Chentech into a global empire. But lately, the crown had begun to feel more like a cage. She walked to her private wardrobe, past the rows of designer suits and evening gowns that cost more than most people's cars. In the back, behind the Chanels and Diors, she found what she was looking for: simple jeans, a plain sweater, and worn sneakers she'd kept from her college days. The clothes she'd worn before becoming Sarah Chen, tech billionaire, her security. Chief Michael watched with poorly concealed concern as she emerged from her office transformed. Miss Chen, I must advise against. You can follow at a distance, she conceded, knowing this was the only way she'd be allowed this small freedom. But no close detail, not today. The elevator ride to the garage felt different in these clothes. The same employees who would normally scramble to greet her now barely glanced her way. It was refreshing, like taking off a mask she'd worn so long she'd forgotten it was there. Sarah thought about her father as she walked to her least conspicuous car, a modest grey sedan. He'd started Chentech in their garage, back when they could barely afford rent in their tiny San Francisco apartment. Never forget where you came from, he'd told her before cancer took him 3 years ago. Success isn't about how high you climb, but about remembering the ground you started from. The rain started as she drove through downtown Seattle, her security detail maintaining their promised distance. She passed coffee shops where people huddled over laptops, food trucks with lines of workers grabbing quick lunches, real people living real lives. When was the last time she'd done anything so normal? Her phone buzzed constantly. Her assistant. Probably having a meltdown, the board members wondering if she'd lost her mind, reporters speculating about her sudden disappearance. She turned it off, enjoying the unfamiliar sensation of being unreachable. The car's warning light flashed suddenly, the engine making sounds that reminded her of her college days when she couldn't afford proper car maintenance. How appropriate that even her escape vehicle was rebelling against her plans. She pulled over in a neighborhood she didn't recognize, the rain now coming down in sheets. As she stepped out to check the engine, though she had no idea what she'd be looking for, Sarah felt the rain soaking through her clothes. For the first time in years, she wasn't Sarah Chen, CEO of Chentech. She was just a woman with a broken-down car in the rain. The irony wasn't lost on her. Here she was, worth billions on paper, standing helpless beside a smoking car. All her money, her influence, her power, none of it mattered in this moment. She couldn't even call her usual support system without ending this brief taste of normalcy. A few people passed by, hurrying through the rain, some glancing at her with mild concern, but none stopping. In her normal life, people fell over themselves to help her. Now she was invisible, just another stranger in trouble. The rain had completely soaked her simple clothes, and her feet were cold in her old sneakers. Yet somehow she felt more alive than she had in years. In the boardroom, every word was calculated, every gesture measured. Out here, there was no performance to maintain, no image to project. She thought about the morning's board meeting, where they discussed automating another factory line. It's just business, they'd said about the 300 jobs that would be lost. When had she started accepting such statements without question? When had efficiency started mattering more than humanity? A particularly loud clap of thunder made her jump, and she laughed at herself, a genuine laugh, not the polite chuckle she'd perfected for business functions. Her father would have appreciated this moment, seeing his daughter stripped of all pretense, standing in the rain like the student she'd once been. The sedan's engine ticked as it cooled, steam rising from under the hood. Sarah watched it, remembering the countless times her father had taught her about engines and circuits in their garage. She'd been so interested then, before spreadsheets, and stock prices became her world. When had she lost that hands-on connection to the technology that built her empire? In the distance, she noticed a man approaching, concern evident on his face. In her normal life, her security would have already intercepted him. But today was different. Today, she was just a stranded traveler in need of help. Little did she know, this moment of vulnerability would change not only her life, but also the life of the kind stranger walking toward her through the rain. James was finishing his shift at Pete's when he saw her through the rain. A lonely figure standing beside a smoking car. He'd seen that same defeated posture countless times before, usually on people who couldn't afford repairs they desperately needed. Something about her solitude in the downpour made him forget about his own exhaustion. "Engine trouble?" he called out, already reaching for the small toolkit he always carried. The woman turned, and he saw relief flash across her face, a genuine expression he recognized from years of helping stranded motorists. "Yes," she said simply, her voice carrying a hint of resignation. It just stopped. James popped the hood, shielding his eyes from the rain as he examined the engine. Steam rose from a clearly burst hose, and his experienced hands quickly found the problem. Coolant hose ruptured. Not a major repair, but you won't be driving it tonight. The woman, he'd later learn her name was Sarah, nodded as if she'd expected this news. Water dripped from her simple clothes, and James noticed she was shivering slightly. His daughter Emma's voice echoed in his head. "Helping others helps everyone, Dad. Look," he said, closing the hood. "My car's not much, but it's parked just around the corner. You can use it until yours is fixed." The words came out before he could second-guess them. Sarah's eyes widened with surprise. "You'd lend your car to a complete stranger?" James shrugged, fishing his keys from his pocket. "We've all needed help sometimes." He didn't mention the countless times he'd wished for someone to show him the same kindness when life had knocked him down. "I couldn't possibly," she began, but James was already holding out his keys. "It's an old Toyota Corolla, nothing fancy, but it runs. Just..." He hesitated, thinking of Emma's school schedule. "I need it back by tomorrow afternoon, if possible. School pickup." Sarah took the keys carefully, as if they were made of glass. "Your child?" "My daughter." James nodded, rain running down his face. "Emma, she's 12. Something shifted in Sarah's expression, a softening around the eyes, a gentle smile that seemed to come from somewhere genuine. "I'll have it back to you first thing in the morning," she promised. "But how will you get home?" James gestured vaguely toward the bus stop. "Public transit's not so bad." He was already calculating the route home and tomorrow's journey to Emma's school. "At least let me get your contact information," Sarah said, pulling out a simple notepad from her bag. No phone, James noticed. It must have gotten wet. As James scribbled his number on the damp paper, neither of them could have known the significance of this moment. He didn't see the sleek black car parked discreetly down the street, Sarah's security detail maintaining their distance. She didn't see the worn textbook in his back seat, evidence of a father's dedication to his daughter's dreams. "The turn signal sticks sometimes," James explained, pointing to the car, "and the heat takes a few minutes to really kick in." He felt oddly compelled to apologize for the car's condition, but Sarah was already shaking her head. "It's more than I deserve," she said softly, and something in her tone made James wonder what kind of life this stranger led, that such a simple act of kindness could move her so deeply. As Sarah drove away in his old Toyota, James stood in the rain a moment. Longer, something about the encounter felt significant, though he couldn't have said why. Perhaps it was the genuine gratitude in her eyes, or maybe it was just the simple act of helping someone who needed it. The bus ride home was long, and his clothes were still damp when he finally walked through his apartment door. Emma was already asleep on the couch, her physics homework spread around her. As he carried her to bed, she stirred slightly. "Where's the car, Dad?" she mumbled sleepily. "Helping someone who needed it more than us tonight, kiddo," he whispered, tucking her in. "That's good," she murmured, drifting back to sleep. "That's what heroes do." James smiled in the darkness of their small apartment, thinking of the mysterious woman in the rain. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges, the morning bus route, the pending school fees, the endless struggle to keep everything together. But for tonight, he had done what he knew was right, and sometimes that had to be enough. The morning bus ride with Emma was a new kind of adventure. She bounced beside him on the worn seat, treating their necessary transportation change like an exciting field trip rather than the inconvenience it really was. "Look, Dad, you can see inside everyone's apartments from up here," she said, pressing her face against the window. Her breath fogged the glass as she watched the city wake up. "And we're so much higher than in the Toyota." James checked his watch again. They'd left 30 minutes earlier than usual to accommodate the bus schedule. "Remember, honey, I might be a little late picking you up today. If I'm not there right after school, wait in the library. Do my homework. Don't leave with anyone else," Emma recited, rolling her eyes with all the drama a 12-year-old could muster. "Dad, I know." The bus lurched to a stop, and Emma grabbed her backpack. "But where exactly is our car? You never really explained." James helped her adjust her backpack straps. "I told you, someone needed it more than we did last night. She'll bring it back today." "She?" Emma's eyes lit up with interest. "Is she pretty? Go on. You'll be late." James deflected, giving her a gentle push toward the school entrance. He watched her skip up the steps, her curious mind already spinning. Stories about the mysterious woman with their car. Across town, Sarah sat in her penthouse office, still wearing the simple clothes from yesterday. The old Toyota was parked in her private garage, looking oddly out of place among the luxury vehicles. She'd driven it all night, long after her car had been towed for repairs, finding a strange peace in its honest imperfections. Her assistant hovered nervously at the door. "Miss Chen, about yesterday's cancellations." "I need you to do some research," Sarah interrupted, her fingers tracing the worn Toyota keys. "Find out everything you can about James Mitchell. He's a mechanic at Pete's auto shop." The board meeting. "In 10 minutes? Can wait." Sarah turned to her computer, pulling up her banking app. "Also, I need you to arrange something, quietly." Back on the city bus, James stared out the window, mentally calculating the month's expenses. The school tuition was due Friday. The electricity bill was already late, and now he'd missed his morning delivery shift. The lost income from one shift wouldn't break them, but it sure wouldn't help. His phone buzzed. An unknown number. "Your car is fine," a familiar voice said when he answered. "I can bring it to your work around noon?" That would be perfect, thank you. James hesitated. I'm sorry again about the condition. It got me where I needed to go, Sarah cut in softly. Sometimes that's all we can ask for. There was something in her voice, something that reminded him of Emma when she was working out a particularly complex math problem. Like she was seeing patterns he couldn't. When he arrived at Pete's, there was an envelope in his locker. Inside, he found a receipt. His electricity bill, paid in full. Must be a mistake, he thought, even as a strange suspicion began to form. At exactly noon, his Toyota pulled into the shop's parking lot. Sarah stepped out, looking somehow both out of place and perfectly at home in her simple clothes. She handed him the keys with a smile that seemed to hold secrets. Thank you, she said simply, for reminding me of something important. Before James could respond, she was gone, leaving him with the faint scent of expensive perfume and the strange feeling that something significant had just happened, something that went beyond a simple act of kindness on a rainy night. He didn't notice the black sedan that followed her, or the way she watched through its tinted windows as he checked over his car with mechanic's hands, finding it exactly as he'd left it, dents, dings and all. What he did notice later that night was that his Toyota's engine ran just a little smoother than before, but that had to be his imagination, right? Back in her executive office, Sarah stared at the folder her assistant had compiled. James Mitchell's life lay before her, in careful bullet points and official documents, each page revealing a story of quiet determination and constant struggle. Tell me what you found, she said, not looking up from the photograph of James and Emma at what appeared to be a school science fair. The girl's smile was radiant, holding up a project about renewable energy. Her father's pride was evident in his expression, even as the worn state of his clothes told its own story. James Mitchell, age 36, her assistant began. Divorced 5 years ago when his wife left him and their daughter. Works as a senior mechanic at Pete's auto shop, plus evening delivery shifts for various services. No criminal record, excellent. Credit history, despite financial struggles, he's never missed a payment, though several were close. Sarah touched the edge of Emma's school report card. Straight A's, with glowing teacher comments about her aptitude for physics and mathematics. Tell me about the daughter. Emma Mitchell, age 12. Tested well above her grade level, particularly in sciences. She's on a partial scholarship at Wellington Prep, but the family still struggles with tuition. Her assistant paused. There's an outstanding balance due this Friday. How much? $3,000. According to his bank records, he's about $800 short. Sarah nodded, remembering her own father's struggles to keep her in good schools. What about the ex-wife? Maria Mitchell, now Maria Sanderson. Remarried 2 years ago to a real estate developer in California. She pays minimal child support, often late. No meaningful contact with Emma since the divorce. The next document showed James's apartment lease. A small 2-bedroom in an aging building. The rental office had notes about his consistent, if sometimes delayed, payments and his willingness to help with building maintenance in exchange for rent flexibility. His current employment? Pete's Auto Shop values him highly. He's their most qualified mechanic, but the shop itself is struggling with the new luxury garage that opened nearby. His evening delivery work is through various apps. He averages 4 hours per night after his regular shift. Sarah stood, walking to her window. Below, Seattle's tech district gleamed with prosperity, while in the distance she could see the more modest neighborhoods where people like James fought their daily battles. Medical records? He's been postponing his own checkups to prioritize Emma's healthcare. There's a notation about chronic back pain, probably from years of mechanical work. But he hasn't sought treatment. A notification popped up on Sarah's phone. Another board meeting about maximizing shareholder value. She dismissed it, focusing instead on a handwritten letter from Emma's science teacher, praising the girl's project on sustainable energy and suggesting she apply for an advanced summer program. The program's cost was circled in what looked like James's handwriting, then crossed out heavily. The washing machine. Her assistant blinked at the sudden shift. "Excuse me," in their apartment. When our people did the drive-by, they noticed a broken washing machine. "What's the story?" A few clicks on the tablet. "Ah, yes. Building maintenance report from 3 weeks ago. It needs parts that would cost more than a new machine. They've been using the laundromat 6 blocks away." Sarah picked up Emma's science fair photo again. She recognized the look in the girl's eyes, the same hunger for knowledge she'd had at that age, the same passion for understanding how things worked. But where she'd had her father's resources to nurture that spark, Emma had only James's determination. "And love, one more thing," her assistant added hesitantly. "According to his social media footprint, which is minimal, today is Emma's birthday." Sarah set the photo down, her decision made. "Cancel my meetings for the rest of the week and get me everything you can find about Pete's Auto Shop's financials." She paused. "Also, I need you to contact Wellington Prep, anonymously. The tuition." "A payment?" "No," Sarah smiled, remembering the simple grace with which James had handed her his keys in the rain. "All of it. Every semester until she graduates. But he can't know where it came from." "Ms. Chen, are you sure about this level of involvement?" Sarah looked at her assistant, seeing the concern in her eyes. "Yesterday, a man who can barely afford his own lunch gave me his only car because I was in trouble. He didn't ask for anything in return. He didn't even ask my name." She turned back to the city view. Sometimes the world shows you exactly where your resources are needed most. In her mind, she could still hear Emma's teacher praising her potential in science and technology, the same fields that had made Sarah herself a billionaire. "Sometimes," she added softly, "kindness deserves more than kindness in return. It deserves justice." James was under a Mercedes when Pete's voice cut through the usual garage noise. "Mitchell, someone here to see you." Sliding out from beneath the car, he wiped his hands on a rag and froze. Sarah stood in the garage entrance, but something was different. She carried herself with an authority that hadn't been there in the rain, her simple clothes somehow looking more intentional than before. "I hope I'm not interrupting," she said, gesturing to the Mercedes. "No, just finishing up." James noticed. Pete watching with unusual interest. "Everything okay with the car?" "Actually, I wanted to thank you properly, maybe over coffee." She glanced at the small cafe across the street. "I have something I'd like to discuss." 20 minutes later, cleaned up as best he could manage, James sat across from Sarah in the cafe. She'd ordered a plain black coffee, just like him, though. Something told him it wasn't her usual choice. "Your daughter," Sarah began. "She's interested in science." James's face lit up automatically. "Emma. Yeah, she's brilliant, way smarter than me. She's working on this project about renewable energy and—" He caught himself, wondering why he was sharing so much with a stranger. "I saw a science fair photo at her school when I dropped off the car," Sarah explained, though something flickered in her eyes. "The project displays were still up." "That's right, she won 2nd place," James said proudly, then hesitated. "Look, about the electricity bill, I have no idea what you're talking about." Sarah cut in smoothly, but her smile suggested otherwise. "Tell me more about Emma's project." And somehow, James found himself talking about Emma's dreams of solving the world's energy crisis, about her late nights studying subjects he could barely understand, about the summer program her teacher recommended, the one he'd had to tell her they couldn't afford. Sarah listened with genuine interest, asking questions that revealed a deep understanding of the subject matter. "You know," she said carefully. "I might know some people who offer scholarships for programs like that." James stiffened slightly. "We get by just fine." "Of course you do," Sarah said, and there was something in her tone, not pity but understanding. "But getting by isn't the same as thriving. Sometimes accepting help isn't about us, but about the opportunities we can give others." Her words hit uncomfortably close to home. James stared into his coffee, thinking of all the times he'd had to say no to Emma's academic opportunities. "Did you know," Sarah continued, watching him closely, "that some of the biggest tech companies started in garages with people who just needed one person to believe in their potential? Emma's got someone who believes in her," James said firmly. "Yes, she does." Sarah's smile was warm. "And that's why I'm not offering charity, James. I'm offering investment in the future. Sometimes the greatest act of parental love is letting others help our children fly." A comfortable silence fell between them. Through the cafe window, James could see his old Toyota parked outside, somehow looking less beaten down than before. "There's a birthday cake in your car," Sarah said suddenly. James blinked. "How did you—" "The receipt fell out when I was parking. Chocolate with vanilla frosting. Emma's favorite." James checked his watch. "I should get back to work. Need to finish early today for her party. Just the two of us and a movie she's been wanting to see." Sarah stood, smoothing her simple clothes, with a practiced gesture. "Thank you for the coffee, James." And she hesitated, then pulled out a business card. "If Emma ever wants to talk about her science projects, I know a thing or two about technology." James took the card, noting the simple design. Just a name and number, no company listed. "You never did tell me what you do." "Let's just say I work in tech," Sarah smiled. "Small startup stuff." As they parted ways outside the cafe, Sarah turned back. "James, that summer program? Sometimes the universe has a way of opening doors for those who open their doors to others first." Before he could respond, she was gone, leaving James with a business card, a paid electricity bill he still couldn't explain, and the strange feeling that his act of kindness in the rain had set something much bigger in motion. Back in his car, he found not just Emma's birthday cake, but also a small wrapped package with a note, "For a future scientist." Inside was a professional-grade calculator, the exact model Emma had been eyeing in the school supply store. James sat in his car for a long moment, torn between pride and gratitude, wondering just who Sarah really was, and why she seemed so invested in their lives. The changes started small, almost imperceptible at first. James noticed his Toyota running smoother, though he couldn't find any signs of tampering when he checked under the hood. The check engine light that had been a constant companion for months had mysteriously disappeared. Emma was the first to notice the bigger changes. "Dad!" she called out one morning, staring at her school's parent portal on their shared laptop. "There must be some mistake. It says all my tuition is paid, even for next semester." James frowned at the screen, a familiar suspicion growing. He'd been about to sell his grandfather's old watch to cover this month's payment. "I'll call the school," he said, but somehow never got around to it. The washing machine was next. He came home from work to find Mrs. Rodriguez, their elderly neighbor, excited about the repairman who'd come to the building. "Such a nice young man," she said, beaming. "Fixed my sink too. Said it was all part of some new building maintenance program. Your machine's working now, by the way. I heard it running earlier." Inside their apartment, the old washing machine hummed quietly, working better than when it was new. A small note stuck to it read, "Regular maintenance is key to longevity." Building management. But it was Emma's birthday present from Sarah that had the most immediate impact. The professional calculator unlocked new possibilities in her physics work, and her enthusiasm was contagious. "Look, Dad!" she exclaimed, showing him complex equations that might as well have been ancient hieroglyphics. "Miss Patterson says with calculations this precise, my energy project might have a chance at the state science fair." James watched his daughter flourish, her confidence growing daily. The mysterious Sarah had been right. Sometimes accepting help wasn't about pride, but about potential. Still, he couldn't shake the feeling that these weren't random acts of kindness. The timing was too perfect, the changes too precisely targeted. To their needs. He found himself staring at Sarah's business card late at night, wondering about the woman who'd borrowed his car and somehow seemed to understand exactly what they needed. One evening, after Emma had gone to bed, he finally called. "The number. I know what you're doing," he said when she answered. "Do you?" Sarah's voice was calm, unoffended. "The tuition, the washing machine, the car repairs." The tuition was a clerical error involving an anonymous scholarship fund. She interrupted, smoothly. "The washing machine was building maintenance, and I haven't touched your car since the night you lent it to me." James ran a hand through his hair in frustration. "Why?" There was a long pause. "Do you know what Emma said when I met her at school that day? She told me her dad was a hero, not because you buy her expensive things or because you drive a fancy car, but because you never stop trying to give her a better life." Another pause. "Some heroes need allies, James, even if they don't want to admit it." He thought about Emma's face when she'd shown him her latest test results, about the way her teacher had started talking about college scholarship programs, about the mysterious weight that had lifted from his shoulders. "I can't repay." "Good," Sarah cut in, "because that's not what this is about. This is about a brilliant young girl who deserves every chance to change the world, just like someone once gave me a chance." After he hung up, James sat in their small living room, looking at the now quiet washing machine, the paid bills on his desk, the calculator that had opened new worlds for his daughter. His pride warred with gratitude, but remembering Emma's growing confidence, her expanding dreams, he realized something important. Sometimes the bravest thing a father could do was let someone else help his child soar. The next morning, Emma was already up when he walked into the kitchen working on her project with Sarah's calculator. "Dad," she asked, not looking up from her equations, "do you believe in angels?" James thought about Sarah, about all the subtle ways their lives had begun shifting since that rainy night. "I believe in people who help others without asking for credit," he said carefully. Emma nodded sagely, her eyes still on her calculations. "Like the person who fixed our washing machine?" James smiled, watching his daughter work. "Yeah, kiddo, exactly like that." The revelation came on an ordinary Tuesday morning. James was in the break room at Pete's, half listening to the morning news while checking Emma's science fair schedule on his phone. The TV droned in the background until a familiar voice caught his attention. Sarah Chen, CEO of Chen Tech, announcing a revolutionary new sustainable energy initiative. James's coffee cup froze halfway to his mouth. On the screen was Sarah, his Sarah, the woman from the rain, except she wasn't wearing simple clothes anymore. She stood at a podium in an elegant business suit, her presence commanding the attention of a room full of reporters. "The future of energy," she was saying, "lies not just in new technology, but in nurturing young minds who will push the boundaries of what's possible." The coffee cup slipped from James's hand, spilling across the break room floor. Pete rushed in at the sound of shattering ceramic. "James, you okay? You look like you've seen a ghost." On the screen, the caption read, "Sarah Chen, 34, tech billionaire and Chen Tech CEO, announces 50 Minutes education initiative." The numbers made James's head spin. Billionaire? His mysterious benefactor wasn't just wealthy. She was one of the most powerful people in the tech industry. "That's her," he whispered. "Who?" "The woman I lent my car to, the one who—" He stopped, pieces falling into place. The paid tuition, the repairs, the calculator. What had seemed like generous but manageable help now took on a different magnitude. His phone buzzed. A news alert about Chen Tech's stock soaring. Another about Sarah Chen being featured in Forbes. And there, buried in the article, was a photo that made his heart stop. Sarah in simple clothes, standing in the rain beside a broken-down car. The caption read, "Tech giant goes undercover. Sarah Chen's week, living like an average citizen." The break room started to spin. He'd given his beat-up Toyota to a woman worth billions. He'd apologized to her about its condition. He'd even tried to explain to her how to work the sticky turn signal. Pete was still talking, something about the news being a repeat from yesterday, but James wasn't listening. He was remembering Sarah's words in the cafe. Let's just say I work in tech, small startup stuff. His phone buzzed again. A text from an unknown number. I was going to tell you, coffee again? James stared at the message, then back at the TV, where Sarah was now discussing Chentech's plans for educational outreach programs. The same careful intelligence he'd seen in her eyes that rainy night was there, but now it carried the weight of empire. Emma's morning text about her science project came to mind. Dad, Ms. Patterson says my sustainable energy design could revolutionize how we think about power distribution. Suddenly, Sarah's specific interest in Emma's project made a different kind of sense. She hadn't just been being kind. She'd been recognizing potential, the same way someone must have recognized hers once. He typed back a single word. Why? Her response came immediately. Because you gave your only car to a stranger in the rain, without asking who she was or what was in it for you. In my world, that kind of genuine kindness is rarer than billions. James sat heavily in the break-room chair, watching as Sarah concluded her speech about investing in future generations. The woman on the screen was both a stranger and the same person who'd sat across from him in a simple cafe, talking about helping children reach for the stars. His world had just shifted on its axis, but one thing remained clear. That night, in the rain, he'd helped Sarah Chen find something money couldn't buy, a reminder of simple human goodness, and in return, she'd decided to change his life in ways he'd never imagined possible. James spent the rest of his workday in a daze, his hands moving mechanically through familiar repairs while his mind raced. Every small change in their lives over the past weeks took on new meaning. It hadn't been luck or coincidence. It had been calculated generosity from one of the wealthiest women in the world. The drive home in his mysteriously improved Toyota felt different now. He noticed things he'd overlooked before, the subtle purr of a tuned engine, the fresh smell of new filters, the smooth response of the steering. Not just repairs, but a complete overhaul by what he imagined were the best mechanics money could buy. Emma was waiting at their apartment door when he arrived, practically bouncing with excitement. Dad, you'll never believe what happened. The summer science program, they said I got a full scholarship, and there's even a stipend for materials. His heart clenched. More of Sarah's doing, undoubtedly. But looking at Emma's radiant face, he couldn't bring himself to dampen her joy. That's wonderful, sweetheart, he managed. And Ms. Patterson says someone from Chentech is coming to judge the state science fair. Can you believe it? The actual Chentech. Emma hugged her project notebook to her chest. Maybe they'll like my sustainable energy design. James felt the blood drain from his face. Of course, Sarah wasn't just helping from the shadows. She was actively creating opportunities for Emma to shine. Later that night, after Emma had gone to bed, James sat at their small kitchen table with a stack of papers. The paid electricity bill, the school scholarship notification, the summer program acceptance letter, the building maintenance notice about the washing machine. He'd thought these were manageable kindnesses from someone only slightly better off than him. Now they felt like charity from someone who could buy their entire apartment building without blinking. His phone sat heavy in his hand as he opened the banking app. His finger hovered over the transfer button. He could return the tuition money at least. It would wipe out his savings and then some, but his pride demanded action. A new text from Sarah appeared. Before you do anything rash, remember, this isn't about you. James stared at the message. How did she know? Then again, she probably had ways of monitoring his bank account now. The thought made him uncomfortable. He typed back, "You lied to me." "No, I just didn't tell you everything. There's a difference. I don't want your charity." There was a long pause before her reply came. "Is it charity when a teacher spends extra time with a promising student? When a mentor guides someone with potential? Money is just one form of support, James. You gave me something priceless that night. Perspective. I'm simply returning the favor in the way I can." From Emma's room came the sound of her voice, talking in her sleep as she often did when working through complex problems. His daughter, dreaming of changing the world through science. Another text. From Sarah, "Did you know I grew up poor? My father worked 3 jobs to keep me in good schools. One day, someone saw my potential and helped us. They invested in my future. Now I run a company that changes lives." Tell me, was that charity, or was it someone recognizing that talent shouldn't be limited by circumstance? James looked at the summer program acceptance letter again. Emma's future stretched out before him in 2 directions. One where his pride kept her bound by their limitations, and one where she could reach as high as her brilliant mind could take her. His phone buzzed one final time. "You taught Emma that helping others helps everyone. Don't let pride turn you into a hypocrite." Slowly, deliberately, James moved his finger away from the banking app. Instead, he picked up Emma's project notebook, left open on the counter. Pages of complex calculations and innovative ideas filled. The margins, all made possible by a calculator given to her by a billionaire in disguise. Sometimes he realized true pride meant being strong enough to accept help for those who depend on you. The cafe where they met this time was different, an upscale place downtown where James felt out of place in his work clothes. Sarah, however, looked exactly as she had that first night. Simple clothes, minimal makeup, no trace of the powerful CEO he'd seen on TV. "I almost didn't come," he said as she sat down. "But you did." She smiled, ordering plain black coffee again. "Because you have questions." "Why the disguise? Why pretend to be—" He gestured vaguely. "Normal?" Sarah's eyes held a hint of sadness. "Because I missed it. Do you know what happens when people find out who I am? Everything changes. Their words, their behavior, their genuineness, it all becomes calculated. But that night in the rain, you helped me simply because I needed help." A waitress delivered their coffees, doing a double take at Sarah. She'd clearly recognized her, but Sarah's subtle headshake kept her quiet. "My father," Sarah continued, "was a mechanic too. He worked in a tiny garage in San Francisco's Chinatown. Every spare dollar went to my education." She traced the rim of her cup. "One day, a customer noticed my calculus homework. He was a tech investor, and he saw something in me that transcended our circumstances. That's why I was out that night, trying to remember what it felt like to be on the other side, trying to find something real." James thought about Emma, about all the potential just waiting to be unlocked. "And you found us. I found a man who gave away his only means of transportation to help a stranger." She leaned forward. "Do you know how rare that is? In my world, every action comes with spreadsheets of projected returns. But you just helped. I don't want Emma to think she needs handouts to succeed," James said quietly. "Is that what you think this is?" Sarah pulled out her tablet, bringing up Emma's science fair project designs. "I've had my best engineers look at her work. This isn't charity, James. Your daughter has the kind of mind that could revolutionize how we think about sustainable energy. I'm not giving handouts. I'm investing in brilliance." She showed him the technical analysis of Emma's project, pointing out innovations that even his daughter hadn't fully realized she'd made. "This section here, our R&D department has been trying to solve this exact problem for months. She found an elegant solution almost by accident." James stared at the analysis, seeing his daughter's work through new eyes. "She's really that good?" "Better." Sarah put the tablet away. "But talent isn't always enough. Sometimes it needs opportunity to flourish. You've given her everything you can: love, support, encouragement. Let me handle the doors that money can open. And what do you want in return?" "Want?" "James, I have more money than I could spend in 10 lifetimes. What I want is to see brilliant minds reach their potential. What I want is to honor the memory of my father, who, like you, gave everything he had to let his child dream big." She paused. "What I want is to be the person I needed when I was Emma's age." James thought about the summer program. about Emma's excitement for the state science fair. She talks about you, you know. Not the CEO you, the you she met that day at school. She says you're the first adult besides her teachers who really understood her project. Sarah's smile was genuine. She reminds me so much of myself at that age. All those ideas, just needing a chance to grow. She pulled out an envelope. Speaking of which, Chentech is hosting a Young Innovators Weekend next month, the kind of event that can open doors to top universities. James took the envelope, no longer feeling the sting of charity. You really believe in her? No, Sarah corrected gently. I recognize her, just like someone once recognized me. She stood to leave, then turned back. Oh, and James. The position of head mechanic at Chentech's R&D facility just opened up. The salary is considerable, and it comes with full benefits, including a college fund program. She smiled, just in case you know anyone qualified who might be interested. As she walked away, James looked at the envelope in his hands, seeing it not as charity, but as a bridge between his daughter's potential and her future. Sometimes understanding meant seeing past pride, to recognize opportunity for what it was, a chance to let dreams take flight. The Chentech Research and Development Facility looked more like a university campus than an industrial complex. James stood in the gleaming lobby, his recently pressed shirt feeling inadequate among the sleek modern designs and cutting-edge technology. Displays, Mr. Mitchell. A young woman in professional attire approached. Ms. Chen is ready to see you now. Following her through the facility, James caught glimpses of what looked like scenes from science fiction movies. Robotic arms assembling delicate components, holographic displays showing complex engineering designs, and laboratories filled with equipment he could only guess at the purpose of. Our Vehicular Innovation Department, the assistant explained, noticing his interest as they passed a massive garage space. Teams of mechanics and engineers worked on what appeared to be experimental vehicles, their tools far more sophisticated than anything at Pete's. Sarah was waiting in what looked like a classic auto shop, complete with lifts and tool chests, albeit much more advanced ones than he was used to. She wore a casual blazer over jeans, bridging the gap between CEO and the woman he'd met in the rain. "Welcome to where the magic happens," she said, gesturing to the space around them, "or at least where we try to make it happen." "This is impressive," James managed, still taking in the facility. "It's also where you'll be working if you accept my offer." Sarah picked up a tablet, bringing up some specifications. "We're developing new, sustainable vehicle technologies, but we keep running into practical application issues. We need someone who understands not just how cars work in theory, but how they work in the real world. Someone with hands-on experience," she showed him designs for hybrid engines and alternative fuel systems that made his head spin. "These are brilliant ideas on paper, but they need to work in actual vehicles under real conditions. That's where you come in." "Me?" James looked at the complex designs. "I'm just a mechanic." "Just a mechanic?" Sarah raised an eyebrow. "You kept a '98 Corolla running perfectly for years on a shoestring budget. You can diagnose engine problems by sound alone. My engineers have degrees from MIT, but some of them have never changed their O'Noyle." She led him to a workbench where various engine components were laid out. "Pick any piece," she challenged. James selected a complicated-looking valve assembly. "This is modified for hydrogen fuel cells, but the tolerance is too tight. It'll freeze up in cold weather." He pointed to several other parts. "These need better weatherproofing. This connection point will vibrate loose over time, and this sensor placement will make routine maintenance a nightmare." Sarah's smile widened. "See? That's exactly what we need. Someone who understands how these innovations will work in the real world, not just in a laboratory." The salary she mentioned made him dizzy, more than triple what he made at Pete's. The benefits package included full health coverage, a retirement plan, and most importantly, a comprehensive education fund for Emma. "Why me?" he asked finally. "You must know plenty of experienced mechanics." Because you understand both sides of the equation, Sarah explained. You know what it's like to keep a car running when every dollar counts. That perspective is invaluable when developing technology that needs to be both innovative and accessible. She pulled up another file on her tablet, Emma's science fair project. Plus, your daughter's interest in sustainable energy isn't a coincidence. You taught her to think practically about complex problems. That's the kind of thinking we need here. James looked around the facility again, seeing it with new eyes. This wasn't charity. This was an opportunity to be part of something bigger, to help create technology that could make a difference in people's lives. The commute would be longer, he said slowly, already thinking practically. We have a shuttle service. Or, Sarah smiled. The position comes with a company car, something a bit newer than your Corolla. James thought about Pete's shop, about the struggling business and the limited opportunities there. Then he thought about Emma, about the doors this could open for her future. When do I start? Monday. Sarah extended her hand. Welcome to Chentech, James, ready to help us change the world. Looking at her outstretched hand, James remembered the night he'd offered his car keys to a stranger in the rain. Sometimes the biggest changes in life came from the smallest acts of kindness. Telling Pete was harder than James had expected. The old mechanic had been more than a boss. He'd been a friend, someone who'd given James flexibility when Emma was sick, who'd understood about late payments and missed shifts. Chentech, huh? Pete wiped his hands on a shop rag, looking around his aging garage. Can't say I blame you. Place like this can't compete with that kind of opportunity. Pete, don't apologize. Pete cut him off with a wave. You've got a daughter to think about. Besides, he managed to smile, it'll be good to have someone on the inside when all these fancy new cars start breaking down. The rest of the week passed in a blur of preparation. Emma was ecstatic about the move, especially when she learned they'd be closer to her new summer program. Dad, is it true? She asked, helping him pack his tools. We're really going to live in an apartment, with working appliances, and I can have my own desk for studying. James watched her carefully wrap his wrenches in old towels. That's right, kiddo. No more laundromat visits either, and you'll be working with real engineers. Her eyes shone with excitement. Maybe they can help me with the quantum physics part of my project. The morning of his last day at Pete's, James found Mrs. Rodriguez waiting by his car, holding a packed lunch like she'd done so many times before. You're a good father, she said, pressing the lunch bag into his hands. Taking chances for your children, that's what parents do. Her eyes crinkled with wisdom. Your new boss, this Sarah Chen, she sees something special in you both. Sometimes God sends angels in strange disguises. As James drove home that evening, his toolbox in the trunk for the last time, he thought about all the changes ahead. The new apartment Sarah's HR department had helped him find was in a better school district, with a rent that his new salary made comfortably affordable. The company car they'd promised would be ready on Monday, an electric hybrid that Emma couldn't wait to study. His phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. Ready for Monday? He typed back, nervous but ready. Emma can't stop talking about the lab tours you promised. About that. There's a junior engineering program starting next month for exceptional students. Emma's science fair project already qualified her. James smiled, remembering Sarah's words about investing in potential. She'll be thrilled. That night, as he and Emma ate dinner at their small kitchen table for one of the last times, she looked up from her physics textbook with a serious expression. Dad, are we lucky? James considered the question carefully. I think we're blessed, with people who see our worth and want to help us grow. Like Sarah, Emma's perception, as usual, was razor sharp. She's not just your new boss, is she? She's the one who's been helping us. What makes you say that? Emma shrugged. The calculator she gave me that first day. It's the exact model used in Chentech's labs. I saw it in their promotional video. And the summer program acceptance letter had her signature at the bottom, even though she tried to make it look unofficial. James shouldn't have been surprised by his daughter's detective work. Does that bother you? No, Emma said thoughtfully. Because she doesn't treat us like we're charity. She treats us like we're worth investing in. That's what you always taught me about education, right? It's an investment in the future. Looking at his brilliant daughter, James felt the last of his doubts fade away. They weren't accepting handouts. They were accepting an opportunity to become the best versions of themselves. His phone buzzed one last time that night. Another text from Sarah. By the way, the lab next to yours is working on revolutionary battery technology. Emma might find it interesting when she visits. James looked around their small apartment, at the boxes packed for their move, at Emma's excited face as she worked on her project. Sometimes taking chances wasn't about risking what you had. It was about being brave enough to reach for something better. Monday morning felt like stepping into a new world. The company car, a sleek blue electric hybrid, purred to life with a soft hum that made James's old Toyota seem like ancient history. Emma couldn't stop examining every feature, especially the advanced energy monitoring system. Dad, look. It shows exactly how much power is being regenerated through braking. This could help with my project calculations. Their new apartment complex was a world away from their old building. The security gate opened automatically as they approached, and Emma gasped at the small park with study areas scattered among the trees. Their unit on the 3rd floor had large windows that flooded the rooms with natural light, making their few possessions look somehow smaller, but full of possibility. Your room's down the hall, James told Emma, watching her explore the space with wide eyes. It has a built-in desk. She ran to investigate, her squeal of delight echoing through the still empty rooms. Dad, there's a whole wall of bookshelves. At Chentech, James's orientation began with a surprise. His office was actually a state-of-the-art workshop, equipped with both traditional tools and cutting-edge diagnostic equipment. A team of young engineers waited to meet him, looking both eager and slightly intimidated. Mr. Mitchell, a young woman, stepped forward. I'm Dr. Lisa Chen, no relation to Sarah, she smiled. We're so excited to have your practical expertise. Would you mind looking at something that's been puzzling us? They led him to a prototype engine that combined electric and hydrogen power. James circled it slowly, noting details that only decades of hands-on experience could spot. Your power transfer's inefficient, he said, pointing to a particular configuration. And this'll overheat in real-world conditions. But if you modify this connection here... He grabbed a wrench, then hesitated, looking at the expensive equipment. Please, Lisa encouraged. Show us. By lunchtime, James had helped solve 3 design issues that had been stumping the team for weeks. His practical knowledge complemented their theoretical expertise perfectly, and he found himself energized by the collaborative environment. A text from Emma interrupted his work. The school library has a STEM research center, and Ms. Patterson says I can use it during lunch breaks. James smiled, typing back, Don't forget to eat your actual lunch too. Sarah stopped by his workshop late afternoon, dressed casually in jeans and a Chentech polo shirt. How's the first day going? It's... James gestured to the modified prototype. Incredible. Your team is brilliant. Our team, she corrected. And yes, they are. But they needed someone like you to bridge the gap between theory and practice. She picked up a modified component he'd been working on. The old ways and the new, working together. That's how real innovation happens. After work, James picked up Emma from her first day at the advanced study program. She practically bounced into the car, clutching a new notebook filled with equations. Dad! They have a whole laboratory for student experiments. And guess what? Sarah came to talk to our group about women in STEM careers. She paused, looking thoughtful. She didn't mention knowing us. She just treated me like any other student, but she winked at me when she left. That night, in their new apartment, James watched Emma working at her built-in desk, surrounded by books and project materials. Their old life seemed distant already, like a chapter closing naturally to make way for a new one. His phone buzzed with a final text from Sarah. Check your email. The team's hydrogen cell modifications, incorporating your suggestions, just got approved for advanced testing. Welcome to the future, James. He looked around their new home. At the full fridge, the working appliances, the quiet dignity of having enough. But more than the material changes, he felt the transformation in their spirits. They weren't just surviving anymore. They were growing. The first sign of trouble came in the form of a news article. Chentech CEO's pet project, the mechanic and his daughter. James discovered it during his lunch break, 3 weeks into his new job. The story painted their situation as a modern Cinderella tale, complete with speculation about Sarah's motivations. Sources close to Chentech suggest this could be a publicity stunt. The article read, humanizing the tech giant's image through strategic charity. There were photos, too. Old shots of their previous apartment building, Emma at school, even James working at Pete's garage. His phone started ringing with calls from unknown numbers. Reporters, he guessed, wanting the human interest angle. Emma texted him from school. Dad, some kids are asking weird questions. They saw the article. Sarah was in his workshop within the hour, looking more angry than he'd ever seen her. I'm handling this, she said before he could speak. Our legal team is already demanding retractions. This kind of invasive coverage is exactly what I didn't want for you both. Maybe they're right, James said quietly. Maybe this was all too good to be true. Don't, Sarah's voice was sharp. Don't let them cheapen this. Your job, you earned it. Emma's opportunities, she earned them. I just opened doors. You both walked through them on your own merit. But the damage was spreading. At a team meeting, James caught whispers about the CEO's charity case. Emma reported that some students were suggesting she only got into the advanced program because of connections. That evening, they sat in their new apartment, the space suddenly feeling less like an achievement and more like evidence of their changed circumstances. Emma was uncharacteristically quiet, picking at her dinner. We could go back, James offered, to our old life. It was simpler. Emma looked up, her eyes fierce. No, that's what they want us to do. Feel ashamed for accepting help, for taking chances. She pulled out her project notebook. Sarah visited our class again today. You know what she said? She said success isn't about where you start. It's about being brave enough to accept opportunities to grow. James's phone buzzed. Another reporter. But below that notification was an email from Lisa Chen, his team lead. Your modifications to the hydrogen cell design just passed advanced testing. The whole team knows this project wouldn't have succeeded without your practical insights. Whatever. The media says you belong here. Sarah's text came next. Tomorrow's paper will run my official statement, but here's what I really want to say. 5 years ago, I went undercover in my own company. Know what I discovered? Half my top executives couldn't change a tire. Success isn't about pedigree. It's about perspective, dedication, and heart. She followed up with another message. Emma's science fair project was reviewed blind by our panel. She scored highest in theoretical innovation. That's not charity, that's merit. James watched his daughter working on her project, her determination unchanged by the day's events. The equations she wrote were the same ones he saw the engineers using at work. Her ideas about sustainable energy matched the discussions in their research meetings. She belonged in that advanced program, just as he belonged in that workshop. Dad, Emma looked up from her work. I figured something out today. You know how in physics, when you add energy to a system, there's always resistance. But that resistance is what makes transformation possible. She smiled. Maybe that's what's happening now. James thought about the article, the whispers, the doubts. Then he thought about the prototype engines in his workshop, the excited discussions. With his team, the way Emma's eyes lit up in the research lab. They had earned their place here, not through charity, but through their own capabilities, finally finding the right opportunities to shine. His phone buzzed again. Sarah had sent a final message. Remember the night you gave me your car. You didn't do it for praise or recognition. You did it because it was right. I helped you for the same reason. Don't let anyone tell you that kindness needs justification. Looking at his daughter, secure in her calculations and dreams, James realized that true transformation wasn't about what others thought. It was about having the courage to become who you were meant to be, regardless of how you got the chance. The old garage in San Francisco's Chinatown didn't look like the birthplace of a tech empire. Sarah stood before the faded building, now converted into a trendy coffee shop, with James beside her. She'd asked him to meet her here, away from the gleaming offices of Chentech, for what she called an important conversation. "This was my father's shop," she said, touching the weathered brick wall. "Chen's Auto Repair. 18 hours a day, 7 days a week. He slept on a cot in the back office, so he could send money home to my mother." James noticed her fingers tracing old grease stains that somehow survived decades of repainting. "What happened?" "A customer noticed me doing calculus homework between oil changes." "Mr. Roberts. He ran a venture capital firm." Sarah smiled at the memory. "He started talking to my father about investing in my education. Dad was like you at first, proud, resistant to help. But Mr. Roberts said something I'll never forget. Talent is universal, but opportunity is not." She led James to a small park across the street. That investment changed everything. Private school, coding camps, MIT scholarship. But Dad kept working here, kept his humble lifestyle. "Never forget where you came from," he'd say. "The night we met," James realized. "You were trying to remember. I was trying to find something real again." Sarah sat on a park bench, watching the morning traffic. "Success is a strange thing, James. It builds walls around you. Everyone wants something. Every kindness comes with strings attached." She looked at him directly. "Except that night. You didn't know who I was. You just helped." James thought about Emma's words about resistance and transformation. "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because you need to understand. This isn't about charity. When I help Emma, I'm repaying a debt to Mr. Roberts. When I give you opportunities at Chentech, I'm honoring my father's memory." She pulled out an old photograph, a young girl in oil-stained clothes, beaming beside a complex mathematical equation drawn on a garage whiteboard. "That's you," James said softly. "That's Emma, too. And every other brilliant mind just waiting for a chance to shine." Sarah's voice grew passionate. "Do you know what the hardest part of success is? Watching people dismiss your achievements because someone helped you along the way, as if accepting help somehow diminishes your own hard work." James thought about the recent media coverage, the whispers at work. "Like they're doing to us now." Exactly. But here's what I learned. True giving isn't about power or debt. It's about recognizing potential and having the means to nurture it. She stood, walking to the old garage's window. "My father died before Chentech went public. But every time I help someone like Emma, every time I give someone like you a chance to grow, I feel him smiling." Inside the coffee shop, trendy professionals typed on laptops where cars were once repaired. "The world changes," Sarah mused, "but some truths remain constant. Talent still needs opportunity, kindness still matters, and sometimes the greatest gift we can give someone is the chance to become who they're meant to be." She turned to James. "You and Emma remind me of my father. And me. The same determination, the same dignity, the same potential. I'm not giving you anything you haven't earned. I'm just providing the same kind of opportunity Mr. Roberts gave me." As they walked back to their cars, his company hybrid parked beside her modest sedan, Sarah added one final thought. "You know what my father said when Mr. Roberts offered to help? He said, 'My daughter's future is worth more than my pride.' That's true wisdom, James. That's true love." James watched her drive away, understanding finally settling in his heart. They weren't characters in some modern fairy tale. They were part of a continuing cycle of recognition and opportunity, of talent meeting chance, of kindness rippling forward through generations. That evening, helping Emma with her project, he saw Sarah's young self in his daughter's determined eyes. The equations might be different, the technology more advanced, but the fundamental truth remained. Sometimes, the greatest act of pride was having the humility to accept help, so you could one day help others in return. The State Science Fair buzzed with excitement. Hundreds of projects filled the convention center, but Emma's display drew constant attention. Her sustainable energy design, refined through months of work in Chentec's labs, stood out with its practical applications and innovative approach. James watched from a distance as his daughter confidently explained her project to the judges. She'd grown so much in these past months, not just in knowledge, but in confidence. Gone was the girl who worried about asking for new school supplies. In her place stood a young scientist, sure of her place in the world. "She's a natural," Sarah said, appearing beside him in her judge's blazer. She'd recused herself from judging Emma's category, but had insisted on being part of the event. The other judges are impressed, especially with her real-world testing data. The data had come from James's workshop at Chentec, where Emma had been allowed to test her theories on actual prototype engines. The results had even influenced some of the company's current research directions. "We're announcing a new initiative today," Sarah continued, watching Emma demonstrate her project to an enthusiastic crowd. "The Chen Mitchell Scholarship Fund, for promising students in STEM fields who just need a chance to shine." James turned to her, surprised. "Mitchell, your story inspired it. The mechanic who gave away his car to help a stranger, who chose his daughter's future over his pride. That's the kind of spirit we want to celebrate." She smiled. "Plus, Emma's already agreed to mentor future recipients." Across the hall, Pete had come to watch, beaming like a proud grandfather. He'd closed the shop for the day, bringing several regular customers who'd known Emma since she was little. Even Mrs. Rodriguez had made the trip, armed with enough homemade cookies to feed every competitor. The prototypes from James's team at Chentec were prominently displayed in a special exhibition area. His practical modifications had revolutionized their approach to sustainable vehicle design, earning him a promotion to Head of Practical Innovation, a position created specifically for his unique perspective. "Dad!" Emma called out excitedly. "The university representatives want to talk about early admission programs." James watched his daughter dive into animated discussion with professors from top engineering schools. Her project had evolved far beyond its original scope, incorporating principles that challenged current energy storage theories. "You know," Sarah said softly, "my father never got to see Chentec succeed, but he believed in me long before anyone else did, just like you believed in Emma." "We all need someone to believe in us," James replied, thinking of his journey from that rainy night to this moment. The award ceremony brought the final surprise. Emma's project didn't just win first place, it was selected for special recognition by the Department of Energy. As she accepted her award, she spoke words that brought tears to James's eyes. "Success isn't just about individual effort," she said, her voice clear and confident. "It's about community, about people who believe in you, who open doors you didn't even know existed. My dad taught me that helping others helps everyone, and now I understand. Success isn't just about achieving your dreams, it's about helping others achieve theirs too." Later, at the celebration dinner Sarah had arranged, James watched Emma moving confidently among scientists and engineers, holding her own in complex, technical discussions. His daughter had found her place in the world that once seemed so far out of reach. "When do you start the scholarship program?" he asked Sarah. "Next month. We've already identified 20 promising candidates." She paused. "We'd like you to help select them. You have a unique perspective on recognizing potential in unexpected places." James thought about their old apartment, about Emma doing homework. by flashlight to save electricity, about all the doors that had seemed forever closed. Now here they were, about to help open those same doors for others. "You know," he said, watching Emma demonstrate a principle to an attentive group of engineers, "that night in the rain, I thought I was just helping someone in need. I never imagined I was actually helping us find our way home." Sarah smiled, raising her glass in a quiet toast. "To the power of kindness," she said softly, "and to all the doors it opens." Around them, the celebration continued, but James's thoughts were on the future, not just his and Emma's, but all the lives they would help transform through the scholarship program. Sometimes the greatest gifts we receive are the ones that enable us to give to others. 1 year later, the old Toyota Corolla sat in a special display case at Chentec's Innovation Center alongside Emma's original science fair project. A plaque beneath it read, "Sometimes the smallest acts of kindness can change the world." James stood before it, remembering that rainy night that had changed everything. The car had been fully restored, but they'd kept all its little imperfections: the sticky turn signal, the temperamental heating system. Each flaw told part of their story. "Ready for the ceremony?" Sarah asked, joining him at the display. She was dressed formally today, but her smile held the same warmth it had that first night in the rain. The Chen Mitchell Scholarship Fund was celebrating its first year, with 35 students now pursuing their dreams in science and technology. Each had a story like Emma's, brilliant minds just waiting for an opportunity to shine. Emma, now 14, had grown into her role as a mentor for the younger scholarship recipients. Her sustainable energy project had evolved into a full research initiative at Chentec, with patents pending. Universities were already competing for her future enrollment. "Dad," she called, hurrying over in her presentation outfit. "The new scholars are here. Can you tell them the car story, about that night in the rain?" The incoming scholarship students gathered around, their eyes bright with possibility. James saw his daughter's former self in their eager faces, all that potential just waiting to be unlocked. "It started with a simple choice," he began, touching the Toyota's worn hood. "To help someone in need, without expecting anything in return." Sarah stood quietly at the back of the group, watching the story work its magic again. Her father's photo now hung in Chentec's main lobby, alongside the company's new motto, "Innovation begins with kindness." James's workshop at Chentec had become a hub of practical innovation, where engineers and mechanics worked side by side, combining theory with real-world experience. Pete now sent his most promising apprentices there for advanced training, bridging the gap between old wisdom and new technology. The real lesson, James told the students, isn't about cars or technology or even success. It's about recognizing that we all need help sometimes, and that accepting help doesn't diminish your worth. It multiplies your potential. After the ceremony, as the new scholars excitedly explored the Innovation Center with Emma as their guide, James and Sarah stood by the Toyota one last time. "Sometimes I wonder," James said, "what would have happened if it hadn't rained that night?" Sarah smiled, watching Emma demonstrate a prototype to her eager audience. "I think we still would have found our way here. Kindness has a way of creating its own opportunities." Through the window, they could see Chentec's latest project taking shape, a new research center dedicated to accessible, sustainable technology, inspired by Emma's original insights. The building would house future scholarship recipients, continuing the